Hello and welcome back. MC1 Gamer here, bringing you a response video to the topic of the week. I already did a video just kind of showcasing all of the, well, not all, but most of the conversions that I'm doing for my Death Army. That's also doubles as a Bretonnian army, so it's an undead Bretonnian army. But the main topic of the week also was addressing conversions in general, and that was Vince Ventrala's topic of the week. He does this every week. And I wanted to give a little bit more detail about some conversions and address specifically converting. First of all, I have a bunch of things laid out here. I'll go over some of the details, but just to talk about converting in general, I love converting. It's probably the biggest passion I have when it comes to the hobby aspect. More than painting, certainly not more than playing, but the idea of having a model or an army that is unique, that's my own, that has some utility is really important to me, and I like that. And I usually find reasons that are practical why I do what I do, but then there's creativity that's involved. But some of it is swapping out weapons or having different features. There was a whole lot more WYSIWYG stuff and options that you could have in Warhammer Fantasy up until 8th edition. Age of Sigmar doesn't have quite as much, but it's there. And we're starting to see more of that, certainly, when it comes to the General's Handbook with Match Play and with the Allegiance abilities, because now there are specific magical items, but there are also unit-specific things where you have to choose this or that. But it's also just a matter of the creativity of the hobby, making the model pop, bringing out some interesting features. So just to go over some of the things that I do, some of them may be simple utilities such as this. This is the Magmadroth, which is it's one of the more recent releases, and I wanted to have something that I could I can make this a Magma Dragon, which is it's from the Monstrous Arcanum. There is points. It's a legal model in Age of Sigmar in matched play, certainly legal in open play, and I wanted to have something that looked sufficiently fiery and draconic and looking like a dragon. So I decided to use this as the benchmark, and I've seen this happen before, but I needed to have a wing set. Now, one of the viewers, Dieter, by the way, thank you again, was able to send me these plastic ones. I didn't want metal ones because I don't want it to be too heavy, and I wanted to have the option of being able to easily sculpt and adjust things with it. So I took a piece, as you can see here, from the actual set that didn't get used. It was from one of the alternate builds. Not sure if that's coming out well. Let's see. Let's see if that's coming out okay, clear-wise. And then I attached with green stuff, and I put I put more than one, a couple of magnets, and then I recessed some magnets here. Now, I recessed it in this way, and I filled up this entire area here so it was solid, so that this wouldn't fall through or puncture through. But I recessed it because, and I gauged the distance for the harness, the actual the platform, and that the rider actually stands on. He more stands than sits on this particular model that as it's supposed to go. So if I wanted to use this as a Magmadroth with a rider, that I could, and I'm magnetizing that to put on there. And I haven't started tackling this yet because it's kind of low in my queue. But I wanted to be able to put this on and have it, reasonably strong, and not, if I turn this completely upside down, it's probably going to fall off. Oh, well, maybe not, but if I shake it, it will. But, it's just a couple of magnets. It's not a lot. And I'm going to put this actually is a little too small. I had an oval base that I was going to use this actually to be its base. This is like a 120 by 90, I think, oval. This is the same base that comes with for instance, the I think this is the base that comes with the Mortis Engine Coven Throne. It comes with the Thunder Tusk Stonehorn, but the official base that comes with the Forge World Magma Dragon is I think it's a 160 round, which is huge. That's the one you see back there. So it's going to basically be on that one, which is a little more appropriate. Now, I probably would have gone with bigger wings if that was the case, but I'll probably do something similar to this and make it just a whole lava, with lava flow and, cracked earth and glowing redness. And I'll make one of those 160 rounds to be the actual base. Not that bases matter, but they could matter, and I like to try to stick to a reasonable base size appropriate with a conversion to the actual model. I highly recommend that. If I could give, one of the top suggestions I would give to any converting is if you do anything unusual, you want it to look reasonably like the model it's supposed to be. You want to make sure that your opponent is not going to question, what is that? Even if you identify it earlier on in the game, before the game actually starts, if during the game there's too much question as to what that model is supposed to be, there's going to be, it causes some strife, it causes dissension, it causes any kind of issues, and I think that you're asking for trouble. If you're with friends, they're probably not going to care, but you want to make it easier for your opponent, and if it's not a stock sculpt, try to make it something that looks very obvious. And I always try to stick with something that is similar size. Obviously, you don't want to have a dragon a quarter the size of the actual one. That you try to stick to the base size, because if you are measuring base to base and you have base restrictions as you're part of your local meta or part of an organized event that you're going to, even if you're just doing it in your garage, it might be better to do it that way. You're safer that way. If you're playing where your bases don't matter, which is the default basic way to play, then it doesn't matter. But you never know who you're going to run into and who you're going to play or where you're going to play. So it's always good to stick to that. I try to stick to that. So I've actually rebased a couple of my models to the recent bases that have come out with Age of Sigmar with repacks. Like, for instance, the Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon slash Ghoul King on a Terrorgeist. It's on a 160 round, so I had them on actually these bases, and I picked up a couple of those big 160 rounds and decided to use that. So getting on to some of these other things, I don't do a lot of my own sculpting. I usually do it if it's like a little piece. If it's fur or it's some kind of an accessory. I don't sculpt entire models, but I did do something similar to that, and I put up a video with this recently. This is a Mongol. The actual Mongol is from Forge World. This is not that Mongol. You can see it's almost identical. I've actually used some of the Terrorgeist claws. I had wireframe that went from the body and the arm. This is actually also from that box set, the Terrorgeist extra claws. At least I think that's what it is, if I remember correctly. This is a Bretonian horse that's been ripped up. He's got I added some exposed vertebrae and his rib cage, and put that down in there. But the rest of this, and I did a video on this, so go ahead and take a look at it. You can go look, just search back recently for a Convert This series that I've done. This is all done with this putty clay that you put around the model, and when it dries, and it can be reheated so you can reuse it and remold it, you can fill it in with green stuff. And I got all these details, and you can see there's some features that are missing. It doesn't have quite the teeth. But then, once it dried, look, it's not perfectly dry. I can move this a little bit. But this is good as a stand-in, and I think it came out really good considering, look, it was a lot more effort than I would have preferred. Look at nice, some pretty good, details there on the back too. And I sculpted some of the striations on the arms and the musculature. But look, this is an example of testing and trying something, going outside your comfort zone and trying something out. Obviously, it's not fully painted, by the way. Trying something out that you haven't tried before. I wanted to see, could I do this? Could I duplicate it? And it looks good enough that I can, I finished painting it. It's going to be worthy of being on the table. So I'm really happy with how this came out. But I would definitely encourage people to go outside their comfort zone. So I'm testing my own limits as well. But I'm not gone so far as a full sculpt of a model from ground up. It's not where I am yet. I'm not a sculptor. Some other things that you'll see here are, I have a project that I'm putting in, and I don't have the top pieces yet, for my Beast Claw Avalanche that I'm sharing with my son. I picked up the new box set, but I have two already. One is a Stonehorn, one is a Thundertusk, but I wanted some options in terms of not just the riders, but also the heads, because there's a lot of great battalions, some of which use Stonehorn, some of which use Thundertusk. So I wanted some options that I could adjust. Now I'm going to put some plastic tabs that are going to extend from these sides here. So when I put the platform variant on it. I'm going to have two different variants, obviously, depending on it, if it's ridden by two guys or if it's just the Frost Lord or Huskar, I think it is, the characters, the heroes, so that I can remove one and put the other. And I'm going to have it where it's magnetized, but I'm going to have a break, a safety where it's just a plastic tab coming from here, and it's going to be obviously going this way underneath this lip. So when I put it on there, even if it wasn't magnetized, it could sit on there. But then I want a magnet so it stays. So I'm going to have that guide all around, so I don't have to fill up this entire cavity, because I don't want to do that. And then what I'm going to have is, I'm going to have a rod, probably a brass rod or so. I'm thinking of maybe doing 2 brass rods for some stability. Depends on how thick it is. And I'm going to coming out from here. I might actually have it where I extend it all the way through and then anchor it in the back there so that it doesn't wobble, because there's nothing here, and if I don't want to build that up, but there's a really good, you go all the way into the back there, maybe throw some green stuff in there, have it stick in there. When it dries, glue it. When it dries, it'll be a nice anchor. It's a little more extra rod space, but it's better than just building up this whole thing, and it'll give it a lot more stability so that there's not as much give on this side. And the reason why is, even though I'm going to have some magnets here, when I insert this on, I want the rod, to actually be supportive so it doesn't droop, so it doesn't pull down. So that's what I'm going to do. And of course, I've cut this out. You can see this is supposed to be filled in. I've cut this out on all of them so that I can swap these out. And I'm going to have, obviously, the insertion point go in here for the rod or rods, and then I'm going to have the corresponding magnets that are going to go and be able to be put there. And you can see, look there, it fits just perfectly, and it will when it's done. So those are the other types of conversions I like to do for utility, and for being able to maximize the usefulness of the model. And there's a lot of these multi-kits where this stuff is really useful. You have one body, but maybe you have multiple heads that you can swap out, or multiple riders. And I do that a lot, as you can see from the other video, when it comes to weapons. So there you have that. Then I have, when the fear of potentially taking a very expensive model and just making it your own. And while I don't really sculpt individual pieces to make these totally new sculpts. I'm not a sculptor. I've gotten a little better at the idea of building stuff that I need, but I'm not a sculptor. And the idea of taking a really expensive kit and just cutting it up has, a lot of people are afraid of that. And before anybody else that I knew was doing it, there was a couple people doing it. I know one person did this model also. He was sitting on a throne. And I thought it came out great. I mean, I laughed about it. I said, looked like he's on the toilet and he needs a magazine, because he actually had a book also. But it was a great sculpt, and I know it's been featured and went around a lot. And I thought it was a beautiful sculpt. But at the same time, I had been doing this one, and this is mine. And this was originally on a 150 by 100 millimeter rectangular base. And I took the ruins from the Arcane Ruins, put that as my basis. I had been playing this for a while. And I wanted to have Nagash just be a very different Nagash. I didn't like the tiny size of his head. I really didn't like the kind of spiky bone extrusions that were coming from the side. I did a video on this also, so you want to see more detail about it, you can go ahead and look at some of my historic videos. Just go through my library. It's probably about it was during the end times, so it's probably about about a year and a half ago that I had done this. And this is not fully painted yet either. This is another one of my projects that is maybe half or 3/4 done. Most of this was done with conversion. So my concept was, and again, this, I don't have as much stuff on the sides here because this was a rectangular base. And I actually put this on another base that I was going to use, but it was too small. And I found out that he was on a 160 round. I said, okay, better put it on a 160 round. And it just about perfectly fit with this. I wasn't going to take him off the ruins. But the idea was I wanted to have, lots of these undead just rising out of his base so that it looked like he was summoning them. So I put all these skeletons and zombies and ghouls just coming out of different sections of the base. Didn't put any in the middle here. I had some, some Black Knights emerging here. I might put another one. I'm probably going to fill out a few more. Just having lots of hands. Just the concept of, him just, summoning tons of stuff. I have the actual Grave Guard, the actual Grave Guard themselves, because I've converted my own. And then, of course, he's got all his spirit, the spirit hosts that are swirling around him. But I didn't want that to be just like that. I put him a little forward because I wanted him to have him a little bit more, in an action pose as opposed to just standing up, a little more passive. But what I did is I added additional host here holding his staff, because the option is for him to be holding his staff or his sword, and I didn't want it to be one or the other. Why would he? He has both. He uses both. Well, where is the one that he doesn't use? Well, clearly he could have his sword sheathed. There is a sheath there when he's not using his sword. But what if he's using his sword? Where's his staff? Well, clearly something is holding on to his staff because you're not sheathing his staff. So I figured it was going to be his trusty servant, one of these spirit hosts. And then, of course, the next thing is I decided I wanted to change up his some of his other things. I liked the I did some adjustments on the shoulder pads. As you can see, they're not the exact shoulder pads. I forget where these came from. Well, maybe they might actually be from this model. I kind of forget where those shoulder pads came from, if they're from this model or not, because I know the ones that are from this model are closed. So I think I can't even remember completely because I've done so much little stuff here. I think this might actually be a from another model. If you remember, please feel free to post it because my memory's failing. And as you can see, his head is not the same head. The head for Nagash is literally about half of that. I wanted a bigger head that was more appropriate with his body. So I cut his Pope hat down, and I put some of these bits into the front there to cover it up, and I fabricated some of these plates to go around the side, which obviously are not part of the actual model originally, and you're not going to be able to see that, but of course they're bone plates, who cares? And I actually used this. This is from, I believe it's from the Necrosphinx, the actual face from the Necrosphinx, the head. So I like the way it looks. It's a bit different. Some people may have a different feel. I just didn't want the bone extrusions in the back, those spiny pieces that kind of flare out. They just didn't work for me. I wanted to keep, obviously, this piece here, but it just didn't work for me otherwise. So this is in various different states. I've put it, obviously, down on a 160 round, and, he's pretty impressive on the battlefield. He's seen a couple of battles. I'm looking to put together a list with him that's, 2,000 point list and see how that works out. Maybe even a 2,500 if somebody wants to challenge that. I'll be doing battle reports with him. But this is another long-term project. He's finished enough I could put him on the battlefield and not feel like, he's not just, basic gray. But the concept is, and he does shake just a little bit because there's so much model here. I just didn't feel like the need. I might actually put maybe another extra tendril of the spirit host to kind of anchor this back part, because I've moved him so many times now and rebased him twice that it's a little bit looser than it was last time. But when I go to tackle this as a final project, I'll make that a priority so that it doesn't have that slight. It has a slight shake, as you can see, but it is pretty sturdy. I mean, this thing, I can pick it up and hold it from any of these points pretty easily. It's not coming off, but I just want to anchor it and make it a little better. But this is a good example of do not fear the big kits. We've seen like Vince talk about, his conversion on Arcan, which is another very expensive model. I've heard people talking about Ilarial and what they might do. These big kits, they're expensive. You chop them up, you can be kind of frightening, but I wouldn't be afraid of that kind of stuff. Take a chance, but I wouldn't start with this. I wouldn't start with this. Start with one model in a unit. Even, if it could be a character model, it makes it easier. If you do something like this, there's so many moving parts. One thing I can say with the conversions is plan ahead. I really thought about this one. I've thought about all these models, as you can see, quite a bit. Plan ahead. Think about what you're doing before you start building. Gather up all the parts. Look for various parts. Look at people's ideas of things that they've done as well. This one was not a hard one. As soon as I knew about the mold capability of this material, and you go take a look at the video, I forget the exact name, Omiyario, something like that. It's a Japanese, putty, and it can be reheated and and resilient enough to be dropped. It can be reheated and remolded and reused, which is great. I use it for little, things that are going to recur on bases, accents on bases. Something like this, get used to magnetization. Just start with magnets where it comes to weapons and, shields and different types of heads, maybe swaps before you go into a big project like that. Get the parts together before you actually decide what you're going to do, and fit them together. And before you actually put anything together, make sure all the pieces fit the way you want and they look the right way, the way you want. And it's all about the planning, and use some creativity, but don't be afraid. Start small and build up. Maybe it'll be a whole unit of different weapons that you might want, things like that. And hope you find this useful. Thanks for tuning in, and have a great day, everybody.